Sign here and take your 10,000, then disappear." The words cut deep as Claire stared at the divorce papers, 15 years of marriage reduced to pocket change. Marcus leaned forward from his hospital bed, voice dripping with false concern. "It's more than generous, considering what you brought to this marriage." His mistress, Sarah Williams, smirked from the corner. "Finally, some sense. She's been a burden long enough." Claire's fingers traced the cheap plastic pen they'd given her. Her own Mont Blanc waited in her purse. Alongside documents no one here had ever seen, proof of an empire worth $700 million. 10,000, she repeated softly. "Take it and start fresh somewhere else," Marcus urged. She looked at the faces around her, all certain she was finished. They didn't know her secret. Her chest burned, not from the surgery, but from betrayal. Tomorrow, the woman they mocked as pathetic would rise, and Marcus would learn what it felt like to be shattered. I opened my eyes slowly, meeting Marcus's startled gaze. "Water," I whispered, my voice hoarse. He fumbled for the cup, suddenly playing the concerned husband. "Of course, baby." "How are you feeling?" "Tired," I said simply, watching Sarah step back into the shadows. But I wasn't tired. I was calculating. Every insult, every laugh, every cruel word was being filed away for later use. 1 week later, I walked through the glass doors of Morrison & Associates, the premier law firm in downtown Atlanta. My appearance was deliberately understated. A simple black dress, minimal makeup, the look of someone who'd just left a hospital bed. What none of the staff bustling around the marble lobby knew was that I owned 80% of this building, this firm, this empire they worked for. The reception desk sat like a fortress, and behind it, Rebecca Martinez looked me up and down with barely concealed disdain. Her blonde hair was pulled back severely, and her smile was the kind reserved for people she considered beneath her notice. "Can I help you?" she asked, though her tone suggested she'd rather not. "I need to see Mr. Morrison," I said quietly. Rebecca's perfectly painted eyebrows rose. "Do you have an appointment?" "Because Mr. Morrison doesn't just see walk-ins, especially—" She paused, letting the unfinished sentence hang in the air like smoke. "Especially what?" I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. "Look, honey, this isn't legal aid. We handle high-net-worth clients. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at the public defender's office downtown?" From the corner of my eye, I saw Sarah Williams emerge from the elevator. She'd obviously followed me here, probably reporting back to Marcus. She whispered something to another woman, a brunette in an expensive suit who looked at me like I was a stain on their pristine floor. "Claire?" Sarah's voice dripped with false concern. "What are you doing here?" "Shouldn't you be resting?" "I have business to attend to," I replied calmly. The brunette stepped forward. "I'm Jessica Walsh, senior paralegal. Is there some kind of domestic dispute we can help you with? We do handle some pro bono cases." "Pro bono?" Sarah repeated with a smirk. "How generous of them." Rebecca leaned forward conspiratorially. "Look, Mrs. Bennett, maybe you should start with something more manageable. There's a strip mall lawyer about 10 minutes from here who might be more in your price range." I stood there, absorbing every slight, every assumption, every casual cruelty. They saw my dark skin, my modest clothes, my quiet demeanor, and immediately categorized me as someone unworthy of their time. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was surrounded by employees of my own company being turned away from my own building. "I'll wait," I said simply, taking a seat in the lobby. Rebecca's face hardened. "Ma'am, I'm telling you, Mr. Morrison doesn't have time for whatever this is about." Sarah settled into a nearby chair, clearly enjoying the show. "Claire, really, this is embarrassing. Marcus is worried sick about you. I met her eyes steadily. Is he? The reception area was filling with other clients, well-dressed white professionals who were greeted warmly, offered coffee, ushered immediately into offices. The contrast was stark and deliberate. Rebecca handed a client form to a man in a $1,000 suit without him even asking, while I sat ignored. "Ma'am," Rebecca called out again, "you're going to need to fill out an intake form and provide a retainer fee of $500 before we can even discuss scheduling a consultation." She slid a clipboard across the marble counter like she was feeding a stray dog. The form asked for assets, income, the nature of my legal needs. Under estimated net worth, I wrote simply, other. Rebecca glanced at my form and snorted. Other? What does that mean? Your collection of unpaid bills? Sarah's laughter echoed off the lobby walls. Claire was always creative with numbers. Tom Walker, a junior associate, appeared like a vulture sensing carrion. His suit was expensive but ill-fitting. His smile the practiced smirk of someone who'd learned to look down on others to feel better about himself. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked Rebecca, though his eyes never left me. "This lady wants to see Mr. Morrison about some kind of divorce case, I think." "Divorce?" Tom's eyebrows shot up. "We don't really handle simple domestic cases. That's more family court territory. Maybe you need someone who specializes in smaller matters?" "I need to speak with Mr. Morrison about a business matter," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. Tom actually laughed. "Business matter? What kind of business could you possibly—" He caught himself, but the damage was done. Sarah stood up, moving closer. "Tom, isn't it? Claire here doesn't really understand how these things work. She's been unwell." "I see." Tom nodded knowingly. "Well, Mrs. Bennett, if you're looking for someone to handle a simple asset division or child support case, I can recommend some attorneys who work with more limited budgets." The condescension was thick enough to choke on. I pulled out my phone and sent a single text message. "I'm in the lobby. Need to meet now." "Who are you texting?" Tom asked suspiciously. "Someone who might actually be able to help me," I replied. Rebecca's phone rang and she answered with her practiced, professional voice. "Morrison and Associates, how may I—" "Yes, sir. Yes, sir, right away." She hung up, looking confused. "Mr. Morrison wants to see Mrs. Bennett, immediately." The lobby went quiet. Tom's smirk faltered. Sarah's confidence wavered for just a moment. "That's impossible," Tom said. "He doesn't even know who she is." But I was already standing, smoothing my dress, preparing for the moment that would change everything. The elevator doors opened, and several men in expensive suits stepped out, the firm's partners, looking serious and slightly out of breath. And there, in the center of them, was Robert Morrison himself. The temperature in the lobby seemed to drop 10 degrees. Tom Walker's face went through several shades of pale as he realized that somehow, impossibly, I actually did have a meeting with the managing partner of one of Atlanta's most prestigious law firms. "Security!" Tom suddenly shouted, his voice cracking slightly. "We have someone here who's been harassing clients and staff." The building's security guard, a large black man named Jerome who'd worked there for years, approached hesitantly. He looked confused, glancing between Tom's panicked face and my calm demeanor. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me," Jerome said apologetically. "Jerome," I said softly, "call Mr. Morrison's office. Tell him Claire Bennett is here." "Don't listen to her." Tom was practically shouting now. "She's obviously mentally disturbed. Look at her. She thinks she has some kind of connection to Mr. Morrison." Rebecca had joined the chorus. "She's been making ridiculous claims all morning. Probably another one of those people who think they can threaten us with lawsuits over nothing." Sarah Williams stepped forward, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Officers, This woman just had major surgery. She's been having delusions since the anesthesia. Her husband is very worried about her mental state. A small crowd had gathered. Other clients, staff members, all watching the spectacle of a black woman being forcibly removed from a place she supposedly didn't belong. Their faces showed mixtures of curiosity, disgust, and schadenfreude. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," whispered one well-dressed client to another. "The quality of people who try to get in here these days." Tom was building momentum now, feeding off the crowd's energy. "Ma'am, you need to understand that this is a professional establishment. We serve serious clients with serious legal needs. We can't have people wandering in off the street making wild claims and disrupting our business." "What wild claims?" I asked calmly. "That you know Mr. Morrison, that you have some kind of business with him. It's obviously fantasy." Sarah nodded vigorously. "She's been having episodes since the surgery. Her husband has been trying to get her help, but she keeps insisting she's someone important." The crowd murmured sympathetically. Poor delusional woman, they seemed to be thinking. Someone should really do something about this. "I have the right to be here," I said quietly, but my voice carried across the lobby. "What right?" Tom demanded. "What possible right could you have to be in this building, demanding to see our managing partner?" That's when Patricia Stone, the firm's senior associate, decided to make her entrance. Patricia was old money Atlanta, the kind of woman who could trace her family tree back to the founding of the city and never let anyone forget it. "What in God's name is going on out here?" she demanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Just removing a trespasser, Miss Stone," Tom said, puffing up with renewed confidence. "Someone who clearly doesn't understand the caliber of our clientele." Patricia looked me up and down with the practiced eye of someone who'd been judging people by their appearance for 60 years. "I see. Well, make sure she's escorted out properly. We can't have this sort of disturbance affecting our legitimate clients." The word legitimate hit like a slap. These people, my employees, whether they knew it or not, were treating me like a criminal for the crime of existing in their space while black. "The police are on their way," Rebecca announced, though I hadn't seen her make any call. "They'll sort this out properly." Sarah Williams pulled out her phone. "I should call Marcus. He needs to know where Claire is." But I wasn't moving. I stood in the center of that lobby, surrounded by hostility and hatred, and I waited. Because I knew something they didn't. I knew exactly who was about to walk through those elevator doors. The elevator chimed softly, and the doors slid open. Robert Morrison stepped out, flanked by 3 other white partners and looking like a man with urgent business to attend to. His silver hair was immaculate. His suit probably cost more than most people made in a month, and his expression was thunderously angry. "Where is Mrs. Bennett?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the lobby chatter like a blade. The entire room went silent. Tom Walker's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Patricia Stone actually took a step backward. Rebecca looked like she might faint. "Mr. Morrison," I said simply, standing up from my chair. His face immediately softened when he saw me. "Mrs. Bennett, I am profoundly sorry for the delay. I was in a conference call with Hong Kong that ran long." He strode across the lobby, hand extended. "I hope you haven't been waiting too long." I shook his hand, acutely aware that every eye in the building was on us. "Just a few minutes, Robert." "Good, good." He turned to face the crowd that had gathered to watch my humiliation. His expression was arctic. "Now, someone want to explain to me why my most important client has been standing in our lobby being harassed by our staff?" The silence was deafening. Tom Walker had gone completely white. Patricia Stone looked like she was trying to disappear into the marble floor. Rebecca was clutching her desk like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "Your client?" Tom's voice was barely a whisper. Morrison's smile was razor-sharp. "Gentlemen, ladies, allow me to introduce Claire Bennett. She is the chairman and CEO of Bennett Holdings, which owns 80% of this firm. She is also the primary investor behind our expansion into international law, our new technology division, and our pro bono program that has helped hundreds of underprivileged clients over the past 3 years." Patricia Stone actually swayed on her feet. That's impossible." "Is it?" Morrison's voice was dangerously quiet. "Mrs. Bennett, would you mind sharing with everyone here your educational background?" I kept my voice level, professional. "Harvard Law, summa cum laude, MBA from Wharton, PhD in economics from MIT. And your previous experience?" "Senior partner at Cravath, Swain and Moore in New York for 8 years. Before that, federal prosecutor for the Southern District of New York. I specialized in white-collar crime and civil rights violations. The lobby was so quiet, you could hear the building's ventilation system humming." Sarah Williams had gone pale as paper. Marcus, wherever he was, had no idea that his pathetic wife had credentials that made most attorneys weep with envy. Morrison continued his introduction like a ringmaster at a circus. "Mrs. Bennett retired from active practice to focus on building her investment portfolio. She currently sits on the boards of 12 major corporations, has a personal net worth of approximately $700 million, and chooses to live quietly because she values privacy over publicity." Tom Walker actually made a small choking sound. "Now," Morrison's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the lobby, "someone is going to explain to me why my most valued client and personal friend has been treated like a criminal in her own building." Rebecca raised a trembling hand. "Mr. Morrison, we didn't know. She didn't say. She looked like what, Rebecca?" The receptionist's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Patricia Stone tried to recover. "This is obviously a misunderstanding. If Mrs. Bennett had simply identified herself." "Identified herself?" Morrison's voice rose slightly. "You mean like when she asked to see me by name? Like when she said she had business to discuss? Exactly which part of that wasn't clear enough for you?" Sarah Williams, who had been trying to edge toward the exit, suddenly found herself in Morrison's crosshairs. "And you are?" "Sarah Williams," she managed. I'm a friend of Claire's." "A friend?" Morrison's tone could have frozen hell. "Mrs. Bennett, is this woman your friend?" I looked at Sarah, really looked at her. The woman who had been in my hospital room, laughing about my impending death. The woman who thought she was richer than me. The woman who was sleeping with my husband while I fought for my life. "No," I said simply. "She's not." Morrison nodded once, sharply. "Security, please escort Miss Williams from the building. She is not to return without Mrs. Bennett's express permission." "You can't do this," Sarah protested. "This is a public building." "Actually," Morrison smiled coldly, "this is a private building owned by Mrs. Bennett's holding company. So yes, we absolutely can do this." As security moved toward Sarah, she turned to me with desperation in her eyes. "Claire, please. I don't understand what's happening here." "Don't you?" I asked quietly. "You stood in my hospital room and laughed about how poor I was. You made jokes about my funeral with my husband. Did you think I was unconscious? Or did you just not care?" The color drained from her face completely. Around us, I could hear people pulling out phones, starting to record. This was about to become very public, very quickly. I never said," Sarah stammered. "You said I was pathetic," I continued, my voice carrying clearly across the lobby. "You said your trust fund made my teacher's pension look like pocket change. You discussed inheriting my assets after I died." The crowd was murmuring now, a low buzz of shock and growing understanding. Sarah Williams was the other woman, the mistress, and she'd been cruel enough to mock a woman in a hospital bed. Morrison's expression went from cold to glacial. "Security, please ensure Ms. Williams finds her way to the street." Immediately, as they led her away, Sarah called back desperately, "Claire, you have to understand." "I understand perfectly," I replied. "I understand that you're exactly who you showed me you were." The doors closed behind her, and suddenly the lobby felt much larger, much quieter. Morrison turned his attention back to the staff. "Now, as for the rest of you, Tom Walker." Tom stepped forward like a man walking to his execution. "You're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you to your office to collect your personal belongings. You have 15 minutes. Mr. Morrison, please." "You called security on our most important client. You accused her of being mentally disturbed. You suggested she didn't belong in this building. Would you like me to continue?" Tom's mouth worked soundlessly. "Patricia Stone." Patricia straightened, trying to maintain some dignity. "Sir, you're suspended pending a full review of your conduct. We'll be examining every client interaction you've had in the past year, with particular attention to how you've treated clients of color." That's completely unfair." "Is it?" "You looked at Mrs. Bennett and immediately assumed she was a trespasser. You used the word legitimate to describe other clients, implying she was illegitimate. I'd say a review is not just fair, but necessary." Rebecca was crying now, soft, hiccuping sobs that echoed in the marble space. "Rebecca Martinez, you're terminated. Human Resources will contact you about your final paycheck." "Please," she whispered. "I have a mortgage. I have kids." "You should have thought about that before you treated Mrs. Bennett like a charity case, before you suggested she go to the public defender's office, before you made assumptions based on her appearance." Morrison turned to address the entire lobby. "Let me be clear to everyone here, staff, clients, visitors. This firm was built on the principle that justice is blind. That means we serve everyone with the same respect, the same professionalism, the same commitment to excellence. What happened here today was a disgrace to everything we claim to stand for." He gestured to me. "Mrs. Bennett chose to invest in this firm not because of our prestigious client list or our marble lobby, but because she believed we could be better than the competition. She believed we could treat every client with dignity, regardless of their background, their appearance, or their bank account." The crowd was listening intently now, phones still recording, the story already spreading across social media. Instead, she was subjected to racism, classism, and outright hostility in her own building. She was threatened with arrest for the crime of asking to see me. She was mocked and humiliated by people whose salaries she ultimately pays. Morrison's voice rose to fill every corner of the lobby. "This will not happen again. Not here, not ever. Anyone who cannot treat every human being who walks through those doors with basic respect and dignity can find employment elsewhere." He turned back to me, his expression softening. "Mrs. Bennett, I cannot adequately apologize for what you've experienced here today. This firm has failed you, and I've failed you as a friend and as a professional." "Robert," I said quietly, "sometimes the only way to reveal a problem is to let it surface naturally. Today has been educational. Indeed it has. And I promise you, changes will be made, immediately." He gestured toward the elevators. "Shall we continue our meeting in my office?" As we walked toward the elevator, I could hear the whispers starting behind us. Phones were buzzing with text messages, social media posts, news tips. The story was spreading. Local woman reveals $700 million fortune after being humiliated at law firm. Black CEO owns building where she was treated like criminal. The hashtags were already forming. Hashtag know who you are disrespecting. Hashtag justice is blind. Hashtag never judge a book. But there was one more conversation I needed to have. I stopped walking and turned around. Actually, Robert, before we go upstairs, there's something I'd like to share with everyone here." He looked surprised, but nodded. "Of course." I walked back to the center of the lobby where dozens of people were still gathered, still recording, still trying to process what they'd witnessed. "My name is Claire Bennett," I began, my voice carrying clearly. "A week ago, I was in the hospital recovering from major surgery. While I lay in that bed, fighting for my life, my husband and his mistress stood over me and laughed. They mocked my poverty. They discussed my funeral arrangements. They celebrated what they thought would be their financial windfall after my death." The lobby was dead silent now. They had no idea that the pathetic woman they were ridiculing had built a $700 million empire through intelligence, hard work, and strategic investments. They didn't know that their victim owned buildings, companies, and assets across 3 continents. I paused, letting that sink in. But this story isn't really about money. It's about respect. It's about the assumptions we make when we look at someone and decide, in 3 seconds, whether they deserve our courtesy or our contempt. I gestured around the lobby. Everyone who works here, everyone who visits here, everyone who walks through those doors is a human being deserving of basic dignity. You shouldn't need to know someone's net worth to treat them with kindness. You shouldn't need to see their credentials to offer them respect. My voice grew stronger. What happened here today happens every day, in every city, to people who don't have the luxury of revealing a fortune to prove their worth. It happens to people who will never have the satisfaction of watching their tormentors get fired. It happens because we've created a world where your value as a human being is determined by how much money someone thinks you have, how expensive your clothes are, how closely you match their idea of what success looks like. I looked directly at the cameras that were recording. I'm sharing this story not because I want sympathy, but because I want everyone to remember something. The person you're dismissing, the person you're ignoring, the person you're treating badly because they don't look like they belong in your world, that person might be exactly who you think they're not. But more importantly, even if they're not, they still deserve better. The applause started slowly. One person clapping, then another, then a wave of sound that filled the marble space. But I wasn't finished. To the Tom Walkers and Patricia Stones of the world, who think they can determine someone's worth with a glance, you can't. To the Rebecca Martinezes, who guard access to opportunity based on their prejudices, you're wrong. And to the Sarah Williamses, who think cruelty is acceptable when you believe no one is watching, someone is always watching. I turned toward the elevators one final time. Never underestimate the power of underestimating someone, and never forget that the person you're looking down on might be the same person who decides your future. As Robert and I walked toward the elevator, I pulled out my phone. There were 15 missed calls from Marcus. Word was clearly spreading faster than I'd expected. The elevator doors closed behind us, sealing us away from the chaos in the lobby. Robert was quiet for a long moment. "Claire," he said finally, "I've known you for 5 years. I've seen you negotiate billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. I've watched you take apart opposing counsel like a surgeon with a scalpel. But what you just did down there, that was something else entirely." "What do you mean?" "You could have destroyed those people. With your resources, your connections, your influence, you could have ruined their lives completely. Instead, you taught them a lesson they'll never forget, and you gave everyone watching a masterclass in dignity under pressure." The elevator reached the top floor. "Robert, there's something else we need to discuss." "Of course. What do you need?" "I need you to prepare divorce papers, and I need you to do it very, very carefully." His eyebrows rose. "Divorce papers?" "Marcus has no idea what he's about to lose. And I intend to keep it that way until the papers are served." Robert smiled grimly. "I take it this won't be an amicable dissolution?" "Amicable?" I thought about Marcus and Sarah laughing over my hospital bed. No, Robert. I don't think amicable is the right word for what this is going to be. As we walked into his office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The satisfaction of being exactly who I'd always been, but finally letting the world see it. The quiet teacher was gone. The patient wife was finished. The woman who absorbed insults and swallowed her pride had left the building. Robert's office was a testament to old money and older power, mahogany panels, leather-bound law books, and windows overlooking downtown Atlanta. He gestured for me to sit in one of the plush chairs facing his massive desk. Claire, before we discuss your divorce proceedings, I need to ask, are you prepared for what this is going to unleash? His blue eyes were serious behind wire-rimmed glasses. The media attention alone. I smiled for the first time all day. Robert, I've been preparing for this my entire life. I just didn't know it. He leaned back in his chair. Tell me what you need. I need Marcus served with papers at his office tomorrow, in front of his colleagues. I want him to experience the same public humiliation I felt downstairs, but I want it to hurt more. Robert's eyebrows rose. Claire, that's unusually vindictive for you. Is it? I pulled out my phone and played the recording I'd made in the hospital room. Marcus's voice filled the office, cold and calculating as he discussed my imminent death with his mistress. Robert's face went white. Jesus Christ, Claire, he said this while you were unconscious, while I was recovering from major surgery, while I was fighting for my life. I turned off the recording. And that's just the beginning. I opened my purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Sarah Williams thinks her trust fund makes her rich. She has no idea what real wealth looks like. Robert opened the envelope and whistled low. These are financial records. Every penny Marcus has spent on her over the past year. The apartment he rented for her under a shell company. The jewelry, the trips, the car. All purchased with money from our joint accounts. Accounts he thought I never monitored. How much are we talking about? $247,000. He's been systematically stealing from our marriage to fund his affair. Robert was scanning the documents, his expression growing more shocked with each page. Claire, this is fraud, embezzlement from marital assets. We can pursue criminal charges. That's just the appetizer. I pulled out another folder. Sarah Williams doesn't have a trust fund. She's a dental hygienist who maxed out 3 credit cards trying to keep up with Marcus's lifestyle. The rich girlfriend story was a complete fabrication. You investigated her? I investigated everyone. Sarah Williams makes $38,000 a year and lives paycheck to paycheck. The expensive clothes Marcus bought her, the jewelry he gave her. She's been playing dress-up with stolen money, pretending to be someone she's not. Robert was shaking his head in amazement. And Marcus believes she's wealthy? Marcus believes whatever makes him feel better about betraying his wife. But here's the beautiful part. Sarah thinks Marcus is wealthy too. She has no idea he's a mid-level marketing manager at a pharmaceutical company making $65,000 a year. I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the street below. They've been lying to each other as much as they've been lying to me. It's actually poetic. What about the trust fund story? Completely fabricated. Sarah told Marcus she had family money to explain why she could afford to go on expensive dates. She was actually going into debt to impress him. Meanwhile, Marcus was stealing from me to afford those same dates. They're both living in a fantasy. Robert was quiet for a long moment. Claire, you realize this changes everything? This isn't just about adultery anymore. This is about financial fraud, theft, conspiracy, and it gets better. I returned to my chair and pulled out a third folder. Remember how they discussed my teacher's pension with such contempt? Yes. I was never just a teacher, Robert. Teaching was my cover story. For the past 15 years, while Marcus thought I was grading papers and planning lessons, I was building Bennett Holdings. Every parent-teacher conference was actually a board meeting. Every summer break was me traveling to oversee international acquisitions. Robert stared at me. 15 years? I started small. Used my signing bonus from the law firm to buy rental properties. Then I moved into commercial real estate, then tech startups, then international investments. Marcus never questioned the extra money because I told him I was tutoring students for extra income. And he believed that? Marcus has never respected my intelligence enough to question anything I told him. In his mind, I was just his simple black wife, grateful to have married above my station. He never bothered to actually understand who I was or what I was capable of. I opened the folder and spread out documents across Robert's desk. Bennett Holdings now owns real estate in 12 countries, has controlling interests in 43 companies, and maintains offshore accounts in 7 different currencies. My personal net worth as of this morning is $734 million. Robert's coffee cup slipped from his fingers, clattering against his desk. 700 million? Marcus thinks he's going to inherit my small teacher's pension. Instead, he's about to discover that he married one of the most successful black women in America, and then threw it all away for a broke dental hygienist. Claire, this makes you one of the wealthiest women in Georgia, in the entire Southeast. I know exactly what it makes me, Robert, and now so does everyone else. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and smiled. Speaking of which, the story is already spreading faster than we anticipated. Channel 7 wants an interview. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution is calling it the scandal that rocked Atlanta's elite, and TMZ is offering a 7-figure sum for exclusive details. Robert was still staring at the financial documents. Claire, why? Why keep this secret for so long? Why pretend to be someone you weren't? I thought about that question. Really thought about it. Because I learned early that being a successful black woman makes people uncomfortable. It challenges their assumptions, threatens their worldview. It was easier to let Marcus feel like the provider, the success story, the one with all the power. But surely he must have suspected something. Robert, Marcus sees what he wants to see. When our mortgage was mysteriously paid off early, I told him I'd received an inheritance from a great aunt he'd never met. When I bought us a bigger house, I said I'd won a small lottery. When I could afford expensive vacations, I claimed they were discounted teacher packages. And he never questioned any of it. Why would he? It fit his narrative perfectly. Lucky Claire. Blessed to have a smart husband who could afford nice things. It never occurred to him that his wife might be smarter, more successful, or more financially savvy than he was. Robert shook his head slowly. The arrogance is breathtaking. The arrogance is about to cost him everything. I gathered up the documents and put them back in their folders. I want you to include all of this in the divorce filing. Every stolen penny, every lie, every moment of betrayal. I want it all on public record. Claire, are you sure? Once this becomes public, your privacy is gone forever. Everyone will know who you are, what you're worth, how you built your fortune. I stood up and smoothed my dress. My privacy was already gone the moment Marcus decided to humiliate me in that hospital room. The only difference is that now I'm controlling the narrative. And what narrative is that? That you should never underestimate a quiet black woman. That success doesn't always look the way people expect it to. That sometimes the person you're looking down on is actually looking down on you. Robert was quiet for a moment, then he smiled. A real smile, not the professional one he wore for clients. You know what, Claire? I think Marcus and Sarah are about to learn the most expensive lesson of their lives. They certainly are. I picked up my purse and headed toward the door. Oh, and Robert? Make sure the papers are served right at lunchtime. I want the entire office to see. As I walked toward the elevator, I could hear Robert behind me, already on the phone with his assistant, beginning the process that would change everything. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside, watching the numbers count down as I descended from the penthouse to the lobby. The lobby was quieter now, but I could feel eyes on me as I walked across the marble floor. The whispers followed me like a wake, phones appearing as people tried to capture video of the woman who'd just turned their world upside down. Outside, Atlanta stretched before me in the late afternoon sun. The city I'd conquered in secret, the empire I'd built in shadows, all of it finally coming into the light. My phone rang. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. I answered on the third ring. "Hello, Marcus." "Claire, what the hell is going on? People are calling me about some story involving you and Morrison and Associates. They're saying crazy things about money and—" "Nothing crazy about it, Marcus. Just the truth finally coming out." "What truth?" "Claire, you're scaring me. Just come home and we'll talk about this." "Home?" I looked up at the building that housed my law firm, my investment offices, my empire. "I am home, Marcus. I've been home all along. You're the one who's been lost. Claire Bennett, the woman who'd built an empire from nothing, who'd overcome every obstacle thrown at her, who'd learned to fight battles with her mind instead of her fists. That woman was just getting started. And Marcus, Sarah, and everyone else who thought they knew who I was were about to get the education of their lives.